Today, I'm going to be talking about gift ideas for martial artists. Everything from training equipment to belt displays, to rebreakable boards, to weapons, even how to choose books and DVDs. This is designed to save you some time and money so that you make great choices. My name is Master Tammy Lawrence, for those who don't know me. I've been teaching martial arts and running schools for over 35 years. I've had a lot of feedback from my students, and I personally have purchased a lot of equipment. This video is broken down by chapters, so if you have a particular area of interest, you can check out the chapters and just jump to where you want to go. Our first category is training equipment. And when I'm talking about training equipment, I'm talking about stuff that you can hit. With training equipment, there's actually two categories that I'm going to give you. Things for beginners and things that are more for intermediate advanced students. My go-to for beginners is a square target. I love square targets for two basic reasons. Number one is it's really versatile. I can switch really quick from punching techniques to kicking techniques just by changing the height or the position of my hold. The other thing that I like about these is it takes 12 to 24 months for students to build both wrist and ankle strength where they can actually strike at the full power of their potential. And with these targets, they're soft enough to where they're not going to hurt their hands, and I can control how much impact they're taking, which is really great. Now, I've tried a lot of targets over the years, lots of different styles and type. I prefer century targets. They're not too hard, they're not too soft, and in my studios, they last twice as long as any other targets that I have. So I have a link to these century targets below. This one is just their standard square target. This one is a kid kick target. It's got a little softer fabric on it. In my kids' classes, I like to do balance drills and have them stand on the targets. These are thicker and they're more firm if you're going to do standing and jumping and walking on the targets. These are better. These break down a little faster. Kicking paddles, double-bladed, is my next best favorite thing for a beginning student. Now, these aren't just for beginners. They can be used for both beginners and intermediate and advanced students. I like the double blades. They have two little flaps here. If you can see that, that clap together. When you hit this target correctly, it gives you feedback on the target. So if you hit it on the end, you hear one sound. If you hit it here, you hear another sound. If you hit it right in the middle, you get that great loud slapping sound. It builds confidence for the students. There's different types of kicking paddles out on the market. There's larger ones, there's smaller ones, and there's medium ones. There's definitely a difference in brand in kicking targets. If you're buying for an adult and you're going to be holding as an adult training, I recommend none other than an adidas kicking paddle. They last twice as long as all the others. Also, they have a more sturdy handle, and they come in 3 different sizes: small, medium, and large. I have a small hand, and before Adidas made 3 different sizes, I used these little BMA paddles. These are from Best Martial Arts or Sangmusa. I'll put a link below. These are also really nice when I'm holding for the kids. And I can have the kids hold them for each other. So if you have kids training at home together, the smaller handle size is nice. They're a little bit more affordable, still the nice double blade. What I would not recommend is, I don't know if you can see the thickness of this handle, but this is this is a Taekwondo Alliance. Somebody gave me this, but this handle is so thick, I can't even keep a hold of it, even when a little kid kicks it hard, because my hands are small. If you have large hands, you might not have to worry about that, but for me, this is not a good choice. Sometimes I get asked if boxing gloves are a good choice. Now, this is a great Muhammad Ali boxing glove. For students that are training in a martial arts that's primarily striking, it may be great. We teach Taekwondo and Hapkido, so we do a lot of kicking. These are not good to kick. And remember, boxing gloves are designed, or boxing pads are designed to be hit with gloves, which is why they have a much, much harder feel. So you should not hit these necessarily barehanded. I usually tell my parents to stick with the square target to start. A softer boxing glove can be better for an intermediate or advanced student. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel. In January, we're going to be releasing some how to hold targets. So if you are practicing at home on targets, we're going to have some video training available on that. So make sure you click that little bell so that you get notified when that video comes out. Let's talk about my next favorite thing when I want students to develop power in their techniques. I like to use kicking shields. They're fantastic. This one has 2 handles on the back and 2 handles on the side. It's a fairly thin pad. This is made for a child. I don't hold these for adults. Adults hit way too hard. And even, I'd say, children under the age of 10 for a target this size for a kick shield. Really nice, a piece of equipment to have at home. I prefer kick shields that have a loop in the back. See this loop right here? And this is pretty solid, and 2 handles and a loop here. And the side loops, I almost never hold by the side loops. Notice the thickness of this target. This is really thick. I can hold this for an adult student. This particular one is a Turtle brand. I'll put a link for this particular target below. I've used lots of different shields. There's a lot of good brands out there in shields. I'll give you a couple links if you're interested in these. The one thing that you need to consider when you're looking at targets is there somebody willing, able to learn how to hold those targets and be able to do it consistently before you purchase little handheld targets. For our next piece of equipment, we're going to talk about heavy bags. Heavy bags are absolutely great. I always get asked about hanging bags. I love hanging bags as an intermediate advanced student. They are a great tool. Hanging bags are not really for beginners. Beginners cannot kick with full impact for at least 12 months, even adults that are strong. You can get a lighter weight heavy bag as an adult and work your way up to it. You need to consider where you can hang the heavy bag. You need to consider that hanging bag will swing when you hit it. Make sure it's not going to put any holes in any walls in your house. And you have to consider if it's going to be a pain to work around. They do make stands for heavy bags. They take a lot of space. So if you have a really dedicated space just for training at home, that could be a great option. I like Wavemasters because they're movable. Nowadays, Wavemasters come in lots of different sizes and shapes. If you are buying a Wavemaster for a small child, they have a kid kick, which I'll put a picture up here, and they also have a Dragon Wavemaster. I know it's purple, does not match my studios, but I still like to buy them because they have a soft fabric on the outside, and the kids don't scrape their knuckles on the vinyl, and it gives a much better experience. Also, there's numbers and shapes and pictures and things to aim at, which you can see on my bags. You may or may not notice on my bags, I'm always putting stickers and tapes and targets on the bags anyway, so the fact that those already have marks make it really handy. The next one is the Classic Wavemaster. If you have an older child, they can work their way up to a Classic Wavemaster. These, you can put as much weight in them as you want, and you can use either water or sand. Keep in mind, if you're going to move it around and you use sand, after a few years, that sand will become really, really heavy. It'll be like moving a rock around. So keep that in mind. Now, if you need some tips on moving your Wavemaster, I've made a video on that. It's a really short, easy video, and there's a link in the description below. You can check that out. When I'm buying the freestanding bags, I like to go with any of Century's bags or better. They last way longer. Don't even waste your money on other brands. In my studio, sometimes the other brands that I've purchased have only lasted us like 6 months with people kicking them hard. The nice thing about heavy freestanding bags, one, you can move them. Number 2 is when you're training, you don't need somebody to hold anything for you. The bag's just there and ready to go at all times. The one last thing I want to mention about bags is I always get asked about Bob. And We've had a bob, which is a bag with a name made by Century. He looks like a man. And in every school, if you are an adult, bob is great. He's firm, so you need to be past the beginning level. But if you have small children at home, you have to be very careful because every studio I've ever had a bob, some little kid came and picked at the screw and bob twirls around in circles. He doesn't stay put when you're trying to strike at him. So keep bob away from little kids. Don't let little kids climb on him. They will destroy bob. Also, bob is not for kids. I know they make a kid-sized bob, but he is much too hard. I've never had a kid not hurt his hand on bob. So I would stay away from bob for all the little kids, probably teenagers and above, maybe like a 14-year-old, 15-year-old and above for bob. The next thing I'm going to talk about is hand wraps. Now, I love hand wraps for my adults. I don't take the time to teach little kids how to wrap their hands, but for adults, it allows you to customize your support when you're hitting the bag. And if you're going to hit a wavemaster or a heavy hanging bag, I definitely recommend that you need to use something on your hands, your knuckles, and your wrists are the most important thing that you need to support. That's what everybody hurts when they try to hit a heavy bag. Now, I will put some links above or on this side or this side for hand wraps. If you don't know how to wrap your hands, then the next best thing would be a bag glove. There's two kinds of bag gloves that I'm going to recommend. One of them has like a bar across that reminds you to keep your grip. It also gives a little bit of stability in the hand and the wrist. And then the other one is a lesser expensive option. It still gives some nice stability in the wrist, and either one of those would be appropriate. So if you purchase a bag, make sure you get yourself either hand wraps or gloves to do bag wraps. So let's talk weapons next. First thing I'm going to talk about is nunchucks. Super popular weapon. Love to teach it to both kids and adults. I'm going to put some links of some weapons. I always recommend starting off on safety weapons. Those are padded nunchucks. This happens to be a rope style because during COVID, I could not find chain ball bearing nunchucks for all the students in the studio. But my personal preference is to use a chain ball bearing, and there are some available now, so I will put a link. It's a really good deal on these this year where you can get two in a nice little kit with a bag. Had a few students purchase these, super good quality nunchucks. Also, as you progress, you'll want to get some wooden nunchucks along the way. I recommend, I personally like the rattan. There's also nunchucks that are fiberglass, and there's hardwood nunchucks. My personal preference is a round nunchuck. The octagonal chucks, I feel like they kind of tear my hands up a little bit. Then again, I'm a musician and I'm sensitive to that. I also am a massage therapist, so I don't want my hands torn up. If that doesn't bother you, you might like the octagons. I have two instructors that really like the octagon wooden nunchucks. So now let's go on to bows. There's lots of different kind of bows on the market. You need to decide what you're going to do with your bow. If you're hitting things like bow to bow, or you're striking bags, or whatnot, you want to go with a hardwood. This is a hardwood bow. It's solid, it's heavy. I like students to start on hardwood weapons first, even if their goal is to do showmanship. These are not going to break as easy, although if you go and hit a tree like 150 times, you still might be able to break them. They also make bows that you can take apart. So this particular bow is kind of in the middle. It's not a toothpick bow, and it's not a hardwood bow. Do you see I'm unscrewing it here? This comes apart, which is really nice if you're transporting it in the car. Pros and cons to these is sometimes when you're doing fast movements with your hands, they'll come untwisted. And I've never had one that didn't come untwisted. In my car, I just kind of slide it along where the doors open and close, and it fits right there in that sideboard, and that's how I get away with carrying my bow in the car. Rattan bows are nice. We made some bows in our school out of bamboo. Those are nice as well because they're really lightweight. I've got some links for some competition bows. So if you're in a school that's into competition, toothpick competition bows are cool. You can twirl them really fast. Don't hit anything with them, they'll break in a minute. All right, let's go on to escrimas. Escrimas are little short sticks. My favorite are rattan. I know a lot of instructors like hardwood. I think beginner students have a hard time handling hardwood because they're heavy on their wrist. So adults, hardwood is great, but for kids, I like the rattan escrimas, and I'll put some links for those. Swords, you need to check with your instructor and see what type of sword training that you're going to be learning in your school, so that way you know which kind of sword to purchase. But I always start on a wooden sword first, and then go to a dull bladed sword. When you're purchasing a sword, if you want to purchase a metal sword, a bladed sword, you're looking for a sword that's going to be full tang. If it's something you're going to train with on the floor, that means that the blade goes all the way through the handle. And you'll usually know it's a full tang because you'll see a connection point here and here. And so you can look for that terminology in the descriptions for swords if you want an actual bladed sword. And I'll try to find some sword links and stick those below as well. Let's talk about wearables, and I'm going to start from the ground up with the feet. So kicking shoes are a great thing for martial artists, especially in the winter when it's cold. You do need to ask your instructor. In some of our schools, we do not allow kicking shoes on the mat. And in other schools, we allow kicking shoes for students that have a good enough pivot and are light on their feet, usually over a blue belt, which is like about 2 years of training and above in our system. A couple pairs of kicking shoes I really love. I love Adidas kicking shoes because they have the tie, and it keeps it tight around your ankle, and you get a lot less twisted ankles. Pros and cons to the tie is the tie, sometimes you'll feel it hit if you're kicking a heavy bag with your kicking shoes on. Now, I also have a pair of very dirty Mutu kicking shoes. These are pretty comparable to Adidas kicking shoes. They both last and wear for a long time, but these tend to slip on my ankle just a little bit. So if I'm doing really fancy kick combos and pivots, I tend to kick them off because I don't want to twist my ankle. Also, uniforms, t-shirts, sweatshirts, sweatpants are great. And usually if you're part of a studio, they carry those things. Check with your instructor. It really helps support your school over the holidays by purchasing those items. I also recommend an upgraded uniform. You wear your uniform every day in class. Make sure you get one from your school if you're an actual student attending a school. Now, if you're training at home, there's some really cool uniforms. I'm going to put some links to some really cool Adidas, Mutu make some really neat Taekwondo uniforms that are dry fit. And so if you like to work out really heavy and you get hot and sweaty, those are great. Heavyweight uniforms are also really fun because you can make them snap. They're hot, but in old school martial arts training, upgrading to a heavyweight uniform was just the way everybody did things. So you had arrived when you could snap your heavyweight uniform. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope this was helpful. Please like our video if it was helpful for you, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit that little bell because we've got some really cool videos coming out in January.